Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have the book recommendations tag to share with you. So I saw Steph do this. I'll have her channel linked down below. I was just scrolling through my subscription feed trying to find like different video ideas or if anyone has done a tag video, and I saw that she did this. I think she said she created this tag. There's 15 questions. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna do the romance edition because I don't really read. I think I might have like two that's not technically romances, but there's a heavy romance plot in them. I thought this would be fun. I'm going to tag a couple of my friends down below if they want to do it. You don't have to, but I'm going to tag you guys, and I'll have the questions in the description box as well. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into the first question. The first one is a book you tell people that is your favorite. So with reading romance, I feel like it comes with a stigma that you're like, ooh, maybe I don't want to tell people I read romance or anything like that. But to be 100% honest, I will just blurt out my favorite books. The first one that usually will come to mind. So when I was looking for a book that's like, oh, what is such a well-rounded book that if I recommend to people, would they actually go pick it up and would they actually enjoy it? The first one that came to mind is one of my top romances I've read, and that's Real by Kennedy Ryan. I feel like Kennedy Ryan can just write such an amazing story, and I feel like anyone who reads romance or doesn't read romance, if they pick up this book, I feel like they're gonna get such an epic story of love, of real life, of someone with a chronic illness that can, move forward in life and have highs and lows, and it shows that also while trying to maintain a career and just get her career started. And I think Ken and Neva have such an amazing love story that I wish everyone could read it, because I know if they would really enjoy it. So as the first question, the first book, I have no problem saying that I read romance. Some people do. I don't know if they actually do. I don't care. I sometimes will blurt out Credence by Penelope Douglas, even though I would not recommend that to a lot of people. But I've been a romance reader for over a decade, and most of the people I know in real life knows I read romance, and I'm not going to shy away from that, So Real by Kennedy Ryan is for the first question. The second question is a book that is your guilty pleasure. So this one is, if you know me, I recently reread this series, and I usually will reread this series multiple times, like at least once a year or once every 2 years, just because I love it and it's like a comfort read to me. And that is Bare to You by Sylvia Day. Now, is this the best thing that's ever been written? Absolutely not. But when I read it, I have a really good time with the messiness, with the angstiness, with him being a billionaire, with her having a lot of money as well, them going through their traumas together. This is just a book that I read really early on in my romance journey. I think I was maybe 18, 19 when I read this. I am now 28, and I just feel like, I don't know, it's stuck with me. It's just always been a book that I will go back to. I was going between this and 50 Shades. I've read this more recently, so it's going to be this one and not 50 Shades. But, don't judge. This is a judgment-free zone, okay? This is my guilty pleasure. I love the Bare to You series, or whatever this is called, and I feel like it's always going to have a place on my shelf. I don't think I'll ever get rid of these books. Question number 3 is a book everyone loved, but you didn't. So I have an author, and I recently just did a vlog for this, and that is Lucy Score. So I have read Things We Never Got Over and Things We Hide from the Light. I read Things We Never Got Over back last year, I think it was, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And I recently was really excited. I love a pink cover. I really loved the blurb for this book for Things We Hide from the Light, and I was really excited to dive in. I did a whole reading vlog for one book because it is the #1 book on the Kindle store. I think it still is as the time I'm filming this. I gave the book 2 stars. I don't get why those two books get so much hype. I have read The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score, and I loved that book. That was a book I read a couple of years ago. Loved it. But for some reason, these contemporary romances, these small town contemporary romances that she's writing, I don't understand why they're so long. I don't understand why they need to be so long. I feel like she's throwing things in both of the books separately just to make them that long, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know why it got picked up by Bloom. I don't understand the hype. So I know a lot of people love them, and if you do, that's great. I'm glad you had a good time reading them. I just don't think either her writing, like the writing style, what she's creating, her plots or character development or anything like that, I just don't think all of her stuff is for me, especially her new stuff, I will say that. So yeah, but those 2 books in general, I will say. So question number 4 is a book you read the fastest. So there's very few books that I can actually sit down and read in a whole sitting, if that makes sense, because I don't always have hours to read, but there's 2 books. The first one I want to talk about is Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is a historical romance. This is a female-female romance. And I remember reading this for the historical romance readathon back last year, one of them that my friends have hosted. And I read this in one sitting. And I didn't even mean to. Like, a prompt was to read a book in one sitting. And I thought I would read a novella in one sitting. But this is a normal 250, 300-page book. Read it in one sitting. Devoured it. Loved it. I just love the story between them two, especially because they're a female couple set in a historical time where most people don't really, that's not okay, especially back in their time. So I just loved this one. And one recently I read in one sitting was The Choice by Ashley Jade. I've been loving Ashley Jade recently, and when I picked up The Choice, I thought I would read a couple chapters and go to bed. And then I found myself staying up till 2 a.m. Granted, this book's only 300 pages, but I did stay up to read it. There's a lot of triggers in here, but I was so drawn to the messiness, to the angstiness of the characters. Basically, it's one of those things. You have two brothers. They're foster brothers. They see this girl, and she so happens to see Josh first, even though Memphis saw her first technically, and they have this messy, I would say kind of love triangle thing. I don't really know what to call it. It was just messy and angsty, and I could not stop reading, and I loved it. So those two I've read the fastest because I read them in one sitting. Question number 5 is a book that deserves more hype. So I'm going to say this even though it's starting to pick up a lot of attention now, and that's Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So I am currently on the 4th book. I'm waiting for the 4th book to come out at the end of March, but I devoured these books. These are very big, more set in a new adult setting, at least the first 2 books, and then you have Saving Six, which is a separate couple. The way that Chloe Walsh is writing this series, the Boys of Toman, is that each 2 books are one couple. So I just feel like a lot of people are reading Binding 13 and keeping 13 now, but I highly suggest reading Joey's story, which is Saving Six. I do have that on my shelves, but I just picked up this one because they're big books. But I just think that Chloe Walsh's writing is so underrated. I want to read more by her. Her books are a little bit older, but I'm excited to dive into more of her backlist. But this is just one that I thought of right off the bat that I think if a lot of people picked it up, even though they are extremely long, a lot of people would love them and fall in love with, especially Johnny and Shannon. I feel like a lot of people could relate what they're going through, and I love them. Question number 6 is a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. So there's a lot that's been picked up. I mean, Bridgerton is a big one. Davy Jones and the Six. I haven't read that book, but I'm excited. I want to read it because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. There's the After series that became movies. And the one that I picked was ACOTAR because I'm on the fence about it. Usually I love when movies, especially romance books, get picked up for adaptation, even if that's TV shows or a movie like Outlander. Oh, I found Outlander, the TV show, then read some of the books, fell in love with them. Favorite couple, love them. But I want to talk about ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, because while I'm excited, that book has a special place in my heart. And I don't know if the TV show, I think it's Hulu that picked it up, is actually going to do it right. And that makes me nervous because I don't want them to screw it up. I have Feyre and Rhys and Cassian and Moore and Azriel all in my head, right? And if they mess it up, I'm going to be mad. You know what I mean? So while I'm excited that people are picking up books like this, I'm a little nervous. I kind of wish they would have done Throne of Glass because I feel like that's a longer TV show. And maybe if they would have done that well, they could have picked up ACOTAR. I don't know. I feel like if you're going to do a trial run, especially with Sarah J. Maas, like do Throne of Glass. Like that's a good start. You know what I mean? But I'm excited, but I'm on the fence. But will I watch it? Absolutely. I'm still really excited. And I want to see what they do with it. Duh. But I'm nervous. Question number 7 is a book you have reread the most. More recently, the books that I have reread the most is a duet, and that is the Anti-Heroes in Love duet by Gianna Darling. I love this duet. Elena and Dante are 2 of my favorite characters of all time. I love reading their story. I love just being in their world and being in their head, being in their messiness, if that makes sense. This is a mafia romance. Our female character is the lawyer for him. Our mafia boss, who is our main male character, he is being charged with all of these things, and she's in charge of getting him out of it, and they slowly fall in love, and I love it. This is the bind up. It has both books in here, but it's When Heroes Fall and When Villains Rise. If you know me and you watch my channel, you know this does not come as a surprise. I've reread this countless times. I think last year I read it 3 times. At least the first book I read it 3 times. Reread it, I should say. And I'm itching. It's the third month of the year now, and I'm itching to do a reread of this. So I may be rereading this soon. I do have the audios. That's usually how I listen to it, just because I love them so much. Number 8 is a book from a genre you typically don't read. So I used to be a huge historical fiction reader, and I used to read at least 1 or 2 historical fiction books a month, but I haven't read them. I don't think in 2022 I read 1. I may have read 1, and that was it. And that was really early on. But I would say one that I would recommend from that I've already read is Lovely War by Julie Berry. So this is one that I read in 2020. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. And I just feel like if you're a romance reader, this has such a beautiful love story. You technically are following 3 couples, but what makes this book so different and why it's been stuck in my head is because it's told from Aphrodite and Hephaestus and Ares and Hades and all this stuff like that. So basically told from the Greek gods, which is so different. But it's told from, I think, one couple's from World War I, one couple is from World War II. So you see how the Greek gods have kind of like used their powers to like make their lives happen, if that makes sense. And I just really, really loved it. I think that this was such a creative and different and unique book that I hadn't read before. So it's been stuck in my head. I've read this book quite a bit, reread this book quite a bit as well, and I've tabbed it. But this is one that I would definitely recommend if you're a romance reader wanting to try different genres. Try this because it does have a heavy love story. And yeah, this one is just stuck with me. When I read this question, I immediately thought of historical fiction, and then I immediately thought of this book. So definitely recommend this book just because I loved it. Question number 9 is a book that deserves all the hype that gets. And you know, if you've been following me, you know, but Heartless by Elsie Silver. I feel like so many people last year in 2022 had this book on their top books of the year. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it was their number 1 book. And I don't know what Elsie Silver did with this Chestnut Springs series. I don't know what. She has it down pat with her writing, the characters, the banter, the romance, the plot twist, the plot development, the character. Like she has it all down pat. I don't know what she's doing. I don't know who is editing or helping her, or if she's doing it all by herself. But this girl has got it. Heartless deserves all the hype. Everyone talks about this book, and I will not get tired of people talking about it. I love it when people pick it up and they message me and be like, oh my God, I love this book. Willie and Cade were amazing. And it's like, yes, I know. We have been telling you. I'm so glad you read it, and I'm so glad you enjoyed it. So if you haven't read this book, you can dive in. This is the second book in the series. You can dive in by itself. Each book follows a different couple, so you're not necessarily missing anything. It's not going to be spoiled, but you will see the first couple in this book, and loved it. Definitely deserves all the hype. It's just, when I read this question, this was the first book I thought of, and it definitely does deserve all the hype. Question number 10 is a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. Well, most of the time in my real life, people don't really ask me because they know I read romance, so unless they're looking specifically for a romance recommendation, but I have 2. Because the first book that came to mind was Credence by Penelope Douglas, but this book is not for everyone. I recommend this for romance readers that have been reading the genre for quite a bit. This is a very taboo, forbidden romance. I feel nervous saying this, but it is between her. She goes to live with her step uncle that she's never met before, and she has a little romance with him. Then she has a little romance with her step cousins. Once again, all people she has never met before. So the step uncle and step cousin is usually just thrown out there just to be kind of shock value, if that makes sense. But I love this. This is the French version, so don't go buy this book. This is French. I just love the cover. Usually I recommend this book, but I know it's not going to be for everyone. So my next go-to that I will always recommend is Two Fights by Nikki Castle. The reason why I recommend this romance is because it is extremely emotional. It has some trigger warnings, but it tells a story of this young woman, Haley, who is getting out of a domestic violence relationship, and she finds someone that literally and figuratively picks her up and lifts her up and gets her back on her feet. But it also shows the reality of that when someone is going through something, you can't always be that person for them. And I personally really enjoyed this story. I personally love Haley and Jax's relationship. I think they have a beautiful romance, beautiful friendship, and it just shows from a woman's perspective what someone that's a domestic violence survivor goes through and how her story kind of plays out. And I will always recommend this one. I love it. Question number 11 is a book that has your favorite character or characters. And I have 2 books for this because it's sometimes really hard. The first one is Always Only You by Chloe Leese, only because I see myself in the female character. This is a hockey romance. He plays hockey. She is on the PR team for them, or social media team, I should say. And Frankie, our female character, she has rheumatoid arthritis, which I also have, but also she has autism. So I just love seeing her perspective on life and what she's living through. I just saw myself in this book. So these are more nostalgic characters. And even though I already mentioned this series, I'm going to mention Dante and Elena. This is the first book, When Heroes Fall. Dante and Elena just have so much depth to them. And when I read them over and over and over again, I always find something else that I love by them. So yeah, gonna mention them again just because I have to. Question number 12 is a book you wish you could live in. And this one was hard, and I'm gonna pick a fantasy romance, and I wish I could live in the From Blood and Ash world. I think it is so cool. Do I want to be a character in that series? What Poppy goes through? No, not particularly. But I think it would be cool to live in that kind of fantasy world. I was going back and forth between this and kind of ACOTAR because living in Valeris would be an absolute dream. Do you know what I mean? So I would say those two. Just throwing a fantasy world in there. Question number 13 is a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. That one I picked is Untouchable by Sam Mariano. A lot of people have talked about this book, and I have actually tried to read this book twice before. And last year I finally decided, after reading another book by Sam Mariano, to just push through the first couple chapters, because in this book our main male character sexually assaults our female character at the beginning of the book, and that was really hard for me to get through. But now that I've been reading a lot of more dark romance, taboo romances, I picked it up and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really loved Cardi Mahoney. I loved the story. I loved everything. It was well worth the read for me, so I was actually surprised that I ended up rating this actually so high, not gonna lie. Question number 14 is a book that made you cry. And one that I remember from the end of last year is Where the Mountains Meet the Sea by A.R. Breck. And I will say, this is not a romance. This is not a romance. It does not have a happily ever after, which is why it made me cry so much. But I do not regret reading this book. I remember voice messaging McKay, my friend McKay from Oh Hey It's McKay, after she read it and I picked it up because I was really intrigued. She was like, uh-oh. So yeah, I was sobbing. I was a sobbing mess, nose running, all of that. I was a hot mess, I'm not gonna lie. Question number 15 is a book you wish you could read for the first time. 100% Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because the reaction I had towards the end of that book of what happened, I was so shocked. Like, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but I was so shocked. I remember just dropping the book like, this cannot be happening right now. This cannot be happening. And I just love that book. I hope that gets turned into a TV show, because that would be an amazing TV show or movie. But that is the book recommendations tag that was created by Steph. So thank you, Steph, for creating it. If you want to answer some of the questions in the comments down below, do that. For an emoji, drop me a black heart emoji, because most of these books were black. But I want to say thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content for me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.